As you can see, even today is very hard to do when you come from a film family. They always associate you with your predecessors. There would be teachers who would be extra nice to me because they were fans of the family. And then there was those who would be extra nasty to me because they judged my family, because they perceive you as privileged and not deserving of the privilege you have. I accept the fact that I had privileges. I will never go on to talk about the hardships that privilege can also bring, because I think marriage as an institution, it was never about love. It was always about alignment. I think it was more romanticized. It gave rise to a lot of unhappiness, where being with someone whom I don't love, I'm trying to just measure up. And to whom? To society? Who will drop you like this? I've had a lot of drama in some of my past relationships. They have gone violent as well.
At the peak of your career, you moved to New York.
It's called the glamour industry, but there's nothing glamorous in it. Personal publicity, marketing, PR. I was like, how disgusting is that? I was able to make all these kind of movies, like Dev D, Oi Lucky, Manorama, Road Movie and all of that. And I got a lot of sort of patronizing attitude, like, yeah, sweet, try. They came back to when all the big names came to me to work with me then. So I didn't fit in to the industry at all. And I remember reading it and calling Zoya and telling her, thank you for offering me this. I knew that Oi Lucky and Devdi challenged the narrative. I think the Zindagi being more mainstream challenged it in some ways far broader. There's this crazy, it's funny in the industry, it's very prevalent. It's like who says hello to whom first, that defines who's more. A real star will never have to think about the little things. When Hollywood that way doesn't like diversity, but it's the African American community that constantly fought so that they can define themselves, not some white person telling them this is whom they are.
Now, with OTT especially, it's almost like a leveler in terms of just talent.
It was.
Okay.
It's not anymore. Now it's very much like, see, and unless you're in some kind of a physical harm's way, anything else that seems dangerous really isn't. Because a shift by nature is going to challenge you. It's going to stoke your fears. Because suddenly what mother said was wrong. Suddenly what daddy said was wrong. That's a huge thing to digest. So fear is normal.
Fame, privilege and success. All things most people chase. But what if they felt more like a burden than a dream? Hi, I'm Karishma Mehta and welcome to HSBC Presents Realign, the podcast where we simplify the concepts of science, spirituality and well-being to help you navigate the complexities of modern life. Today, we're joined by Abhay Deol, who grew up in one of Bollywood's most famous families, but never wanted the spotlight. After Dev D skyrocketed his career, he packed his bags and moved to New York, not to celebrate, but to escape. From battling addictions, his thoughts on karma, love, and true purpose, to hating PR, he talks about how industry egos have shaped Bollywood, and how Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara got him through an existential crisis. This is HSBC Presents Realign Season 3. Are you ready to live it up? Welcome to Realign, Abhay. So
Thank
lovely
you.
to have you.
Thank you for having me.
How are you feeling?
Pretty good, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How's life been?
Life's been, this particular month has been, I've been traveling a lot.
Okay.
So I'm feeling like a little nostalgic for my house and just being settled in one place.
Yeah, that sense of like, okay, I'm back home.
I'm back home and settled. That's what I'm wanting now, which I will have in the next 2-3 days.
Yeah, which is great.
Which is great, yeah.
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 Okay. So you've had such a interesting life, right? Like you've gone from actor, your reels on DJing are extremely popular also, but like you've just seemed very like, I'm in control of this ship and I'm going to navigate it the way I want to. So where do you get that from?
Oh, I'm glad that's coming across.
Yeah.
What you see online isn't necessarily representative of the entire picture. I would say that yes, I am in control of my narrative on one sense, which is I've always pursued my dreams. I've never compromised on what I wanted to do and create. So I've been in control of that. Yeah. I wouldn't say I've always been in control, because in that endeavor to, get to my goals, achieve what I want, you kind of have to find your footing. And sometimes you feel like you don't have any control, and that really threw me off. So it's a bit of both, but I would say that I'm really lucky and privileged and all of those things to have the life I have.
Yeah.
Definitely have more control than most people have you know,
Yeah.
the privilege of. Yeah.
And how much does your formative years, your childhood, have to play in that, right? Because most people say the way you form and shape those experiences in the first half of your
First
life.
7 years particularly.
Yeah, first 7
Was
years.
it a Jesuit priest who said, "Give me a child at the age of 7, I'll give you the man"?
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
So it determines who you are as an adult. So
Yeah.
I know you've said, a lot has been said about your childhood. You've said it, right? Like that you in fact did an Instagram post where you said that you were underconfident and you
Yeah.
were bullied. And today I'm with these stalwarts. So it doesn't determine where you go. But
Yeah.
what was your childhood like? Like, what were those experiences? for
It
you?
was on some level very typical of any Indian family, big family. We are a joint family, so a lot of kids, aunts and uncles along with their parents. Of course, my Tayaji and my dad were in the industry, and then Bhaiya was early on in the industry as well when I was really young. So you were kind of removed from reality from the average Indian family because your family was famous.
Yeah.
So there were certain experiences that I went through that a non-famous family person would never go through. But then there were also certain things that were so typical of an Indian family
Yeah.
that people would be surprised to feel like, oh, really? They said that, or you went through that? We didn't think people of your position would go through something like that.
Yeah.
So it's a mixed bag. But born and raised on what was called Bombay back in the day, and so I'm an urban kid, so that really shaped my life experience as well. Many things, yeah.
So give me an example of both, right? Where you went through something that typically an ordinary average Indian wouldn't, just by default because of the family you were born into. And a second where people would be like, oh, you went through that because of that. So give me an example of both.
So like what you when you come from a famous family, it's written about a lot of the time in school. You would be asked personal questions about your family because, oh, we read this or we heard that. Is that true? They're asking about your mama, your dad, or your uncle. And that someone whose family is not written about obviously would never have
Exactly.
people discussing their personal family affairs. There would be teachers who would be extra nice to me because they were fans of the family. And then there was those who would be extra nasty to me because they judged my family. So you don't know what you were getting.
Yeah.
Either someone extremely favorable and gives you more than what she or he would give the other students, or someone would be extra harsh on you because they perceive you as privileged and not deserving of the privilege you have.
Yeah.
It's a real insight. I think the privilege isn't just that you got certain things easy. The privilege is also that you got certain things that other people have and you don't.
Yeah.
There's a privilege there as well because there's a really deep lesson to be learned over there. Nothing is black and white. I accept the fact that I had privileges. I will never go on to talk about the hardships that privilege can also bring because it's just not my way to do so. In fact, but those hardships, somebody ordinary would never go through. Like, how can privilege bring you hardship?
Yeah.
It seems like a privileged thing to say.
Yeah. Like, how can you even imagine that?
Yeah. But I mean, for example, there was this one teacher who would really insult me in class because she didn't like my family.
Really?
Yeah, she would publicly humiliate me
Saying
and
what?
pass comments on my family. And because something was in the news or something, she would say it out like, you're people who do this. Stuff like that,
Yeah.
So that does come from privilege.
Yeah. And how did you learn to navigate that?
I mean, as a kid.
Yeah.
So as a kid, you just get shocked and you internalize these things because you can't speak out.
Yeah.
You can't speak out loud. And then as an adult, you just focus on the fact that, oh, well, there were so many better things
Yeah.
than as well.
Yeah.
So let's just focus on the good. Why focus on the bad? And now as an adult, I can feel like she was obviously a very troubled human being for downloading on a kid who had no defense.
Right.
And insulting him and humiliating his family in front of everybody. It was a tuition teacher that. It wasn't even in class, but it was in my tuitions. And there were like 5 other students who were my friends, and they just all kept quiet because of how she talked about my
In
parents.
retrospect, when you think of all these things, right? Like even when I think of my schooling, there were so many things that today would be shocking. Like,
Yeah.
oh my God, that happened. But back in the day, it was just
normal.
so normalized. It was crazy how much, like my school had so much body shaming. It was insane by like teachers or like I've
Yeah.
seen professors physically hit boys. And I think of like my sisters have sons. I can't even imagine that scenario in which that's normal.
But I
right?
mean, Indian families also growing up, we get slapped around. It's normal.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's a good thing, but again, if you can learn something from, you only learn from our mistakes, or we only look deeper into the self when you go through a trauma. If you don't have anything traumatizing you and you have nothing challenging you, then you're not going to look deeper into yourself. So one can always use it to one's advantage. And what's normal, there'll be certain things that you and I find normal today that might be unacceptable 20 years from now. How do you know?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's just the nature of evolution. And we must embrace those changes. It isn't to say, oh, well, back in the day it was fine, so why is it a problem now? It's like it is a problem now because we've gone beyond it.
Yeah.
We've evolved beyond it. And so we must now not condone such behavior and call it out in this day and age. You know, I might not punish you for doing something you did 30 years ago that was normal back then.
Yeah.
But I will call you out for doing it today because now we've seen the harm that it has created. Now that you have awareness of it, why would you do it?
Yeah.
You know, if you did it out of unawareness, fine, fair enough. But now the awareness is set in.
Yeah.
You know, like comedy is a classic example. You know, people are getting offended about things that weren't offensive even 10 years ago.
Yeah, 100%.
And I'm like, you know what? But shouldn't comedy just evolve with the times? Like, I'm sure you can still be just as dry and just as cutting today, but keeping in mind the mindset of today. And that way humor can be better. Not that it's being compromised. You just have to find a newer way to perhaps do the same thing. And there's nothing wrong in that. If anything, is again part of the evolution of comedy.
Yeah. You can only tell once you look back, actually. There's no way of forward thinking it at this point.
Yeah. But I think self-awareness now, I suppose, with technology and information traveling so fast, and I think it was Dr. Joe Dispenza who said, in the age of information, ignorance is a choice.
Yeah. I follow Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Yeah, and I think he said that, right?
Yeah.
Like, ignorance is a choice. So it's up to you to inform yourself and be aware. You know, don't thrust it upon others to do it for you.
Yeah.
Whether it's a leader or a celebrity you look up to, but it's up to you to make that choice.
Yeah. You know, what's been interesting, and it's been spoken about so much. So, of course, there's so much out there of how you decided to join films, the early part of your career. But constantly it comes up that at the peak of your career, you moved to New York. It's like, it's every news line, right? Like back in the day.
Yeah.
Do you think that's true?
So I did. I kind of, when Devdi was releasing, just before release, I just went off to New York. And I think I was finding it really hard to deal with the attention and the fame because I started to get flashbacks of as a kid, because I was a very sensitive kid and I didn't like the attention. I liked the art, I liked the creativity, I liked the medium, but I just didn't like the attention that came with it. And I knew that Oi Lucky had come and I knew Devdi was going to be big. And I just didn't want to be famous. But at the same time, I wanted to act. And there was a conflict within me. And I focused a lot on the negatives. I hadn't resolved many issues. So I just ran away because I was afraid of being famous. And everything that came with it. What the privilege I see for my own self growing up in a film environment is I saw fame up front as a kid. And I was never enamored by it. You know, a lot of people will first chase that and they usually get bitten once they hit a peak. I was already bitten, you know, so I was like, I know it would bring me down. How do I navigate this space? And I didn't know how to. No. I really didn't know how to. I mean, it wasn't there's no right or wrong. It was definitely a trauma response, but it had to happen. Yeah, I don't regret it. I didn't care about stardom. I care about the acting. And there's a lot I can say, but yeah.
So when you did move to New York, you also spoke about the fact that you continued to drink after that, after the character.
Yeah.
What was that year like just, in terms of, because so many people today, right, talk about like taking a sabbatical or taking a break in order to you disconnect to reconnect effectively.
Yeah.
But it's often misunderstood or it's executed poorly, where you don't necessarily end up with answers, but like
Yeah.
more questions,
Yeah.
hypothetically. So what was your year like, and how did you arrive at the decision that, okay, maybe I'll go back, or maybe I figured
When
some
I
stuff out?
went there, I knew it wouldn't be forever because I was just indulging.
Yeah.
I was just indulging. I was very destructive. And, they say some actors take their work home, and it's a process to learn how not to be affected. And I'm not now. I mean, I'm older now, and I don't take my work home. And I think of myself, at least, as extremely self-absorbed and indulgent to take that work home. It's like, get over yourself. You're just an actor, You should just embrace the privilege of being an actor as opposed to focus on the pitfalls that come with it and stop taking yourself so seriously. So that was my takeaway, but that didn't happen at the end of that year. If anything, I got more and more destructive as that year progressed. I knew what I was sacrificing. I knew that this was my time to capitalize on my success with the industry. But when I looked at the industry, all I saw was the trauma as a kid, and remembered, the experiences that my taya, my uncle, my brothers had gone through, and the things they said, and the stories they had, and the system that was in place, and how things are done. Like it's called the glamour industry, but there's nothing glamorous in it. So all my focus was there, and all my fears were there. And so I was just like, great, I can just walk away. I don't want any of this, which was also disingenuous because I did want to continue acting. I did want to open up the scale of the kind of productions I would do, but I just didn't know if I would have any authenticity left in me if I was to do the things that an actor would normally have to do to get success, to get stardom.
Give me an example. What would an actor...
I mean, like for me, one of the things which now I'm not so about anymore, I embrace it because the world has changed, is personal publicity, marketing, PR. I was like, how disgusting is that? Like, my work should speak for itself. Why am I investing and putting myself in the papers? It's traumatic being in the papers. Why am I like ensuring that I'm visible everywhere so that I get brands? Why should I even endorse brands? You know what I mean? I'm an artist. Artists should not be owned by any corporation. Now, corporations fund everything now. And the films I was making are funded by corporations. But as an individual, I thought that was one of the worst things I could do. I don't necessarily agree with that anymore, because a corporate can also fund and give birth to many positive things as well.
Right.
But at that time, because my focus was so much on the negatives, which also exist, that I wasn't seeing beyond the negative. I was only looking at that. Even when I started, it had just started to shift. It hadn't shifted yet. You didn't have to be a brand face. You could just be an actor. Your films could do well, and you could be away from the public eye. You could still hold this sort of mystery about you because people don't know anything much, because you don't show up publicly. You show up when you do your work, and then you go back into silence and obscurity, so to speak. And that changed over the first few years of me entering the industry. So there was an element of that back in the day where actors could do that. They could just stay actors. They're not, the brand was purely them being artistic, really, and individuals. The only thing they're selling to you are their films and nothing outside of that. So there was an era that was like that. And I'd seen it up close as a kid. There was a remnant of it when I entered the industry, but it was dying at that point. And I didn't see that happening.
So how did the success of Devdi play into this entire mix?
I think there was a lot of validation, because those early years, I was really, somehow, I was able to make all these kind of movies as Devdi, Oi Lucky, Manorama, Road Movie, and all of that. And in the industry wasn't very open, because they just thought that this wouldn't work, because especially back in 2005, 6, 7, 8, no one was making that kind of stuff. Or very few people were at least trying to. So I got a lot of sort of patronizing attitude, like, yeah, sweet, try. Like I'm a kid. And I was new. Who am I to say that, hey, let's change the system?
Yeah.
Prove yourself. You haven't proved yourself. And it was always usually you get launched, you get supported. And then once you're famous, you then start taking chances. Here I was, okay, I was launched my first movie. It didn't do that well for me, but I was still a newcomer. I still had a lot more to prove since my first film didn't commercially do well. So who am I to say, hey, I have an idea, or hey, let's do things this way? Like, who are you? So I think when finally it started to pay off, I then started to, the patronizing and condescension changed from that to, oh, hey, actually, you're great, you're amazing. We'd love to work with you.
Yeah.
And I was really angry with them for, first of all, not seeing me for who I am.
Yeah.
And B, they came back to me, and all the big names came to me to work with me then. Bless them. I mean, I can see where they were coming from. But back then, I just found it disingenuous that you didn't have any faith in me. Now, suddenly you have faith in me. But the product you want me to make conforms to your filmmaking.
Yeah.
Which is exactly the opposite of what I've done. Had I done that, you wouldn't even be sitting with me right now.
Correct.
So why don't you do what I say? And that was considered as arrogance, which I guess is in a way.
Yeah.
But then it worked what I did. So it was very confusing for me. And so I didn't fit in to the industry at all. And I wasn't even trying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you decide that, okay, whatever it is, I'm going to come back and let's just play out the cards, right?
I mean, I knew I wasn't going to stay forever. I was just in New York, really playing out the part I did in the AFD, getting drunk, you know what I mean? And not working or nothing, and just like terrible with my money. And, it was a waste in that sense. I don't call it a waste now, because all experiences are good if you can learn something from them. But it was destructive. So I knew it wasn't going to last. It wasn't going to be forever. I have to come back home and continue to earn and, support myself, family, all of that.
Yeah.
These are responsibilities you have to come back to. This is a make-believe world.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I knew I was going to come back. It's not like
it was not a permanent thing ever.
I knew it was never going to be permanent.
Right.
Yeah. It was an escape.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So
a temporary escape.
You've also spoken so much about the importance of solitude for reflection, right? Life can get so hectic with work, and travel is such a great way to find that space. And now with the HSBC Travel One credit card, I can save 15% on my travel bookings. So tell me, where do you go when you want to reconnect?
I live in Goa. I have my house there. I live in a forest.
Wow.
So, because I'm surrounded by nature, and I'm so lucky to have this property, and I've built the house from scratch, with my architect. So, how lucky that I was able to do that in this life. And it's the place where I connect. It's the place where I can, I love nature essentially.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad that I have something which is bang in the middle of a forest.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily fly to any particular place to connect. And how amazing it is that my own home is a place where I can connect. In a city, with Bombay, with all the construction and noise pollution and air pollution, I don't think I could connect. Even if I had a nice fancy apartment or house here, I would still feel uneasy. I'm now spoiled and I need that. I travel a lot. I've lived in LA also. Yeah. So and LA is a city, but again, it's more quieter than Bombay in that sense. Yeah. You can go for treks and hikes. So again, nature is a big one for me. And I think for all of us as human beings, if you want to connect, honestly, if nothing else, find a garden somewhere or find a green patch somewhere and sit for a minute. Yeah. And if you live in a city that's really noisy, you'll have to just try and block that out. It takes more, but if you can learn to do it.
It's amazing.
I think in this city, though, people eventually get so desensitized. I imagine they can sit in the middle of a traffic, but they find a green patch and still find peace.
Yeah.
I imagine.
Yeah. So many of these things, right, when you talk about reconnection, you talk about, say, childhood trauma, which now people are kind of recognizing and addressing that, okay, this action was propelled because of something that I went through, is a very recent phenomenon. And mental health...
At least in our country.
in our country. Yeah, so we did a little survey where we asked people from within our community what is the one thing that they want to talk about but don't feel comfortable with, and mental health was on top of that list, right? Because people still feel like therapists and things is just not where people really are. They're still struggling to be vocal about what they're going through. What has your experience been, right, with dealing with these emotions, or just addressing them in saying that it
As
is what
in,
it is?
how do I deal with them?
How have you? Yes.
I'll be honest, I haven't really done much therapy, not with a therapist, but I do go online and I will find people I find interesting. And I'm very open. Like I will follow people who are analytical and scientific, quite black and white and science based, to those who follow the Vedas and do rituals and talk about things that go beyond the physical world and everything in between. I don't have any sort of, oh, that is right and this is wrong.
Yeah.
I think the best place to start, at least for me, what helped me was to say that I know that I don't know. Because coming from, oh, I know, you're just closed off. Then you'll only know what you know or what you think you know. And you're not open to learning new things or keeping your mind and heart open to seeing something from a different perspective. It starts there. That starts the search. That inspires the search. And the search now, like I said, in the age of ignorance, the age of information, ignorance is a choice. So how do I get awareness? How do I move from ignorance? And thereby finding all these people, like, so go on YouTube. Information is free.
Yeah.
Go there, see if someone resonates with you, listen to him or her. I did that. And if I really liked someone, which I did, there's a few, then I would go to their websites, because they have websites. Then I would take their courses online.
Yeah.
So they were recorded videos, stuff like that, audios. And then I started to piece it together for my own self.
Yeah.
I would ask the questions like, okay, if I don't have the answers, but I have the questions, that's a good place to start. At least I know something. Again, having the answers would say I know, right?
Yeah.
We don't have the answers. So going online, doing those courses have really helped. And then I have a lifestyle, which is eat healthy. I eat really healthy. I have a physical routine, fitness routine as well. That adds value. Again, like I said, I'm lucky. Like I have a house like in a forest. I breathe in clean air. What people don't realize is the human condition, the human body and the being is very complex. It isn't one size fits all. Isn't one thing that will take care of all.
Yeah.
One of the good things, beauty about our country and our culture is we're very community focused. So, which is probably why therapy didn't pick up here, because in America they focus on the individual. So they don't have the community support. So they need therapists. Whereas in India, we have our community around. So we can always turn to someone for support. We don't need a therapist. But what happens with the Americans is it leads to isolation and loneliness because they don't have that support system. Whereas in India, it leads to claustrophobia because they don't allow you to become something else. You have to be what they project you to be.
Yeah.
So the answer lies somewhere in between. You can't just be focused on your own self. You need to focus on community. But you can't just do what the community asks you or focus on what the community is asking you to, because your individuality matters, which our culture does not actually add any value to.
Yeah.
We're traditionalists. We're not individualists.
Yeah. 100%.
So it's about finding these truths. We have to accept the fact that our society is structured in such a way that we're kind of produced as people who work under an industrialist model. So life isn't about discovering yourself, it's about being productive. So it doesn't matter if you hate your job, just do it, because otherwise how are you going to get any money? So you have to realize that what you do matters, and if you don't have the privilege of doing what you love, then you have to find out, okay, how can I find something of value in my life that fulfills who I am, because I need to do something for me and not just be a drone, show up at an office, push some papers and a few buttons and then go home and expect myself to be happy.
Yeah.
We all want to be productive. We're made to be productive. We're in essence good people, but somewhere there that's kind of sucked out of us because we just become a number in a system, and we have to recognize that we live unnatural lives.
Yeah.
And that is going to have an impact on how we feel. Yeah.
You know, I did this, the Joe Dispenza advanced course. So
I
it
did
was
that.
a few, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a few days long, etc. And like,
Did you do it in person or
no,
online?
I couldn't go in person, but I did it online. But I definitely want to go, and I will.
It'd be fun to
this
go,
year.
right?
Yeah, I think like, you know, he does it by the beach and like by the sea.
Yeah.
So nature is such a powerful element.
Yeah, yeah.
But when I did that, right, I realized that so much of what I was doing was focusing on factors beyond my control. But there is a certain level of control that I have over what I do, or the kind of decisions I make. And when I started operating from there, things like moved a little differently. Because before that, like, I don't know, it was just this light bulb moment where I was like, okay, no, this is just how it is and this is how it's going. What can I do about it? But then I realized that I can do something about it in my way. It may not lead to the entire thing shifting, but I know that I will be able to make at least a different choice. So that was a defining moment for me.
You felt empowered.
Yeah, I felt like, okay, you know what? Like, I'm not going to blame an external circumstance or situation. I'm going to figure out how I'm going to get this done in my own way.
You can't just keep pointing outward. You have to point inward.
Exactly. The journey inward for me was like, I think 2 to 3 years. Like I kept doing more of these things, and I got a lot of answers from within. You know, like earlier I was like I used to ask like my friends or my family for advice, and I've realized that consciously in the past like 3 or 4 years, I very seldom ask for advice. I'm like, okay, you know what? Like they're pretty much at the same space as me, and I don't need to be dependent on somebody else to tell me what to do or which way to go. And I think that was amazing in terms of everything, because now I don't regret anything because it's my decision. Whatever happens. Is there anything specific that you've done that's...
Taking from what you said was interesting, because you said, let me start with what I know.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the time we feel like doing work to improve the self, one has to learn concepts that are beyond their understanding, or it's really complex, and unless it's not complex, then it's not worth it.
Yeah.
And when actually the simplest solution is always the best solution.
Yeah.
And that takes a while to understand that, okay, don't make it hard for yourself. And I think that's why I love acting as a profession, because again, I don't try and make it complex. I just find the easiest solution, because it's very tempting to be dramatic and complex and show all these layers. I'm like, no, I have no layer whatsoever.
Yeah.
There's nothing. It's just it is what it is. It's just white is white, black is black. Yeah. And that leads to an understanding and a relatability far deeper than if I'm trying to show you, ye shade bhi dekho, look at this and look at that color and look at this action. No, keep it simple.
Yeah.
You know, and that really people, I think, get a bit lost and a bit shocked and surprised when they realize the answers were always lying in front of them.
Yeah.
We'll go this whole circle, do all these courses, travel the world, and then come back to the same spot and realize it was always here.
And it's not that big, or it's not that complex, you know, like when you begin. Yeah. And I've just realized that the smaller you make it in your head, it stays that size. It doesn't, unless it's like obviously things out of your control. If you keep thinking, oh my God, this is like massive, how am I going to do it?
Yeah.
It's
that things are out of control is a fact.
Yeah.
But that just means you don't need to look at it. You need to see that which you can somehow adapt to.
Yeah.
And we're really adaptable people. It's like I was having a conversation with my friend just earlier in the room before coming here, and her parents live in Delhi, and I was telling her about how, you know, when the LA fires took place recently, I was there, and I looked at the AQI of downtown LA during the fires, and it was somewhere around 160 or something.
160?
Yeah, and I looked at Delhi at the same time, it was 360.
Yeah.
Which is on a normal day.
It's a good day.
And I asked, what are your parents doing about it? Like, it's okay, so we'll live 5 years less. What's the big deal? We're so willing to just accept and adapt. We don't think.
Yeah.
You know, so that's a unique gift we have of adaptability. But, you know, it can work against you as well as it can work for you.
Yeah, you have to know which way.
Yeah, you have to see, okay, fine. Like for example, addictions, you know, it's why do addictions come up? Because your brain is always trying to conserve energy. So it's trying to record an act that you're doing and use the least amount of energy to do it. So if you're repeatedly doing an action, like for example, smoking a cigarette, it'll eventually just make that channel in your brain so that you don't have to consume too much energy. You just go and do it immediately. Now imagine if the same thing you did, it's you repeat, repetition, repetition, and then it's ingrained in the head. So if you want to get over an addiction, you don't stop that habit. You start to repeat another habit. So pick a healthy one. So let's say walking.
Yeah.
You said, you know what, I'm going to walk every day. And you're not a walker, but you decide I'm going to do it every day. And there'll be a certain point of consistency and repetition where that will get ingrained in the brain. And that is why it's there.
Yeah.
So the mind is an amazing thing and we beat ourselves over it. But that's only because we're doing the wrong actions, or we're doing actions that will lead to results that will harm us. So you have to see what is your first action. I mean, again, coming back to the Vedas, karma, which is action. It's beautifully put, It's what you think you become, what you do will come back around, It's all there.
Yeah. So you believe in karma. You believe that
it's not about belief, it's a scientific fact.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if this was a real candle and I tossed it over and this catches fire, that's karma, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing
It's
to believe over
reaction.
there. It's superficially it's action reaction.
Yeah.
But it's you see that it's a system. It's talking about the system in which the universe functions. So if you live in a state of anxiety, your life will always attract anxiety because your focus is on anxiety. That's karma. So it isn't just as simple as a physical action. It's an internal action. It's your thought process. It's your attitude.
It's insidious.
It's the way you deal with people around you. Yeah. So if you are constantly venting because everything's going wrong, then that will be your life. So it's not a sin to do wrong, and sin is a very Christian, Islamic concept. Vedas don't say you've sinned. It'll just say this is the choice you've made. You live in violence, you'll have violence. Yeah. We're not saying that's a bad or a good thing. It's just who you'll be. It's what you'll go through. Is that what you want? Well, then here you go.
Yeah. So let's talk about the community aspect that we were discussing earlier, right? Like, how are your relationships with your family? How have they evolved through the different phases of your life that you've had? Particularly phases where you were maybe disconnecting to reconnect. Was there a disconnection on that front as well? Like, walk me through how it's been.
I think they've been really lenient with me, my family, because they're pretty conservative, and they were highly protective, especially because of being in the public eye, and growing up, they try to give us as normal a childhood as they possibly could.
Yeah.
Even though that wasn't happening, but they attempted that, and they're also very much a very mainstream family with the films they make, and so I was kind of an oddball. I actually appreciated the protectiveness that I got from them, but being very strongly individualistic, that was a bit of a friction over there. I really wanted to kind of create my own individuality, which, as you can see even today, is very hard to do when you come from a film family. They always associate you with your predecessors, with your parents or your uncles and stuff like that. So they knew that it would be much more difficult for me to do the things. They thought I was a dreamer. And I think it came out of a protectiveness to not have me disappointed, to not have me hurt. And I chose to be disappointed, be hurt, like take those chances. And I think they just at some point said, you know what, go do your thing.
Yeah.
we can't be there for you if you behave like this or expect this. Then go out there in the world and see
how it's like,
how life is, and we are here to support you in any way whenever you need it, but we have to call out the danger you're in, so to speak, to the choices you've made, and I kept doing that. And I think as the years have gone by, they've changed, of course. They've changed their opinions, their views. They're very happy for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I've been living on my own pretty much since I was 18.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. You've obviously dealt with loss. You just said, your father passed. How did you deal with that kind of grief?
We knew it was coming. He'd been sick for a long time. So we were prepared for it. But nothing really prepares you. Or it can soften the blow a little bit, because you saw it coming, so you were kind of like expecting this, that, and the other. But it's never easy. And my Taya and him were really close. I think it was harder on my Tayaji than it was on even me and my sisters, because as brothers, they were just always together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is there a way to deal with grief like that?
Yeah. I mean, it's important to get together, which is what we did.
Yeah.
Again, like, there's no real answer to this. It's easy to say you have to celebrate that person's life. I mean, that is eventually what you end up doing, because carrying on grief is not going to get that person back, and neither is it going to do you any good, and neither is it going to do the people around you any good. And if there is such a thing as an afterlife, I would imagine, like, if I do have a soul and it does live on beyond my body, I'm going to be screaming and saying, "Shut up, stop crying." You're probably going to join me.
Yeah.
You're obviously going to join me.
Yeah, you're obviously gonna. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you do believe in that, there's a certain comforting thought over there that, okay, we are larger than the body.
Yeah. You've also spoken about marriage and being asked about marriage and the concept or the institution of marriage, and how, it's more difficult for people in the public eye to even have relationships. So walk me through a little bit about how it's been for you, or like, what's your take on it?
To each his own, really. I think marriage as an institution, correct me if I'm taking it with a pinch of salt, but I believe this to be true. It was never about love. It was always about alignment. Marriage came more about powerful families. I don't think everybody married in the early days of marriage. So you can check up on this. I believe it was more political alignments, sharing wealth, leading people. It came from that. It was nothing to do with love. I think it was more romanticized, and love came into the picture during the Renaissance in France, more like in this 17th century. I think it started to shift towards, hey, I want to love the person I marry. Why is it about, okay, I'm a princess and he's a prince, and
An
we need
alliance.
our countries to align.
Yeah.
It should be beyond that. I don't want to have a mistress on the side. I want to actually marry the one I love, and not be married to the one I need to be married to, and continue to have my affairs on the side, because it was acceptable, I think, at one time, because marriage was just alliances and not about love. It's not a natural phenomenon. It gave rise to a lot of, like I said, unhappiness, where people were told, oh, a marriage should be this way and you should be that way, and you should love this person. If you don't, then you're evil, or you're sinning, you're having affairs, and all this has come about from this sort of social construct. Whereas in nature, you love, you don't love. No one's judging you for having more than one partner. You can partner up and then stay with that partner for life. You can end up single, and never needing a partner, or feeling fulfilled enough. Maybe not, needs come and go, but finding your own self, because you were able to be by yourself and learn who you are, as opposed to be someone for somebody else.
Yeah.
I'd rather be single and lonely than coupled up and miserable.
Yeah.
Because at least by my own self, I can, no one's judging me or telling me what to do. Whereas being with someone whom I don't love, I'm trying to just measure up. And to whom? To society, who will drop you like this as soon as they find a little weakness in you, immediately. So I think relationships are important. When you have a support system around you, you may not feel the need for a spouse because you're fulfilled. And also, if you do have a partner, a lover, or a spouse, they fulfill that part in your life. But don't expect them to be your best friend and your father and your mother and do this for you and do that for you. It's like you're putting too much on your partner.
Yeah.
Maybe a lover is there to fulfill the physical and emotional need, support you need in certain points in your life, but they're not there to be your best friend either. You want your best friend for that.
Yeah.
To go out and do things that your partner just be like, you go have fun.
Yeah.
And it's fine.
Yeah. It's fine to have that individuality, in the sense of, like, you don't have to also merge into the same person.
Well, that's what most couplings end up happening, most couples end up trying to make you who they think that you should ideally be in a partner. And that's where the conflict starts. So in an ideal world, you want a partner who will encourage you to continue to expand and change and evolve.
Yeah.
And they would also change and evolve along with you. And if you're both down the same path, you're probably going to survive and last. And if you're both evolving in different ways, you should just respect one another. Maybe be friends. Maybe better off being friends than lovers. Or spouses. That it's a nuanced thing, and that's what nature, I think, intended. Nature didn't say sign a paper, and if you breach this contract, you will have hell to pay, and so much money to give, and condemnation and judgment. Nature doesn't say that. Nature expects you to get into your authenticity, and maybe you can find, and if you're lucky, or if it's fated, you find a partner. Or if it's a karma, if you create the karma, you end up a partner who will evolve with you.
Yeah.
Because again, there's no do's and don'ts. There's no right or wrong.
Yeah. And how has the experience of love been for you thus far? And what is the future outlook for you?
It's been good and bad.
As life is.
As life is.
Yeah.
I've had some great relationships. I've had some really miserable ones. One was a narcissist. Now in retrospect, I realized, yeah, she was.
Really? How do you identify that, right? Like,
when in retrospect, you see, okay, that was kind of very unemotional and scheming,
Yeah.
Stuff like that has also happened. I've had partners where I've got great support, where I've been the wrong one, where I've done wrong. So it's both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how are you looking at it from here on? Like, what is your expectation out of love, out of relationships?
Like I said
out
to
of
you,
life?
someone who will help me go further into my authenticity, and someone whom I can help go further into their own.
Just the growth and the evolution as life
Yeah,
goes
just
on.
like we need to, I think it's important for your partner to be someone on the same page as you. At least in terms of, the way you look at life.
Or values. Certain values, yeah.
They have to have the same values. So for example, I don't believe in violence.
Yeah.
So I've had a lot of drama in some of my past relationships. They have turned violent as well. Emotional, mainly. And that's not good. Not good for my partner, not good for me. Not pointing fingers at anyone.
Yeah.
It's a learning curve.
Yeah.
So I think it's important that someone should have that value. Like, I don't like drama.
It's so boring.
Yeah, can you avoid the drama, please?
Yeah.
There will be drama. I'm not saying there won't be. But I'm not a dramatic person.
Yeah.
It's like, that's one value that's important for me.
Yeah.
I'd sooner try and solve it, or at least sit with it without lashing out.
Yeah.
Or without making like a huge deal out of it.
Yeah, like life is ending.
Yeah.
Yeah. It
Yeah,
happens.
like, no, it's not the end.
Yeah, it's not the end.
Yeah, get over yourself.
Yeah.
Someone with a sense of humor.
Yeah.
Humor is important for me.
Yeah.
I tend to bring in humor at the most inappropriate places.
So somebody has to appreciate that.
I should at least understand when sometimes it
Yeah.
can be very inappropriate,
Yeah.
but to have a forgiving mind.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
also have to learn, right?
Yeah, of course,
Yeah.
100%. So when you talk about, say, masculinity, right?
Yeah.
Especially now, there's like a broad diagram, right? That you see you have to behave in a certain way, or you have to be the provider, or like a certain amount of financial wealth, or so many different preconceived notions that you have of masculinity as well as femininity, which I think more and more is being challenged now. What is your definition of masculinity in the context of everything that's going on today?
Again, if you go back to our Indian culture and the Vedic texts, I mean, there were more than two genders. And so I think it also kind of says we all inhabit the masculine and the feminine. It's within us.
Yeah.
We have both those qualities within us. And in that sense, we're all they, them, in a way, And so these roles that have been defined by a Western culture are being challenged today. And we as Eastern cultures don't know how we define masculine and feminine.
Yeah.
Not from how it was before the British came in. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
We have to go to historians to find that out.
Yeah.
And they also do the research to kind of put the clues together. See, okay, how did we
You're like
define masculine?
piecing it together.
Yeah,
from
yeah.
different
So
sources.
really, I was talking to a friend who's non-binary, and I was asking them that if they didn't have to wear a skirt and dress up as a woman, would they still feel the need to express themselves as they, them? Because if you were not defined as a woman, if you were told that you can dress the way you want, a woman doesn't dress that way, a man doesn't dress that way, an individual dresses this way. The outward is an expression of their inward.
Correct.
Would the drive to define they, them still be there? Because whatever I know of Hinduism and Buddhism, we have to go beyond the body to transcend this life, right?
Yes.
But if we're so defined by how we are being addressed, then are you not being absorbed by the body? And isn't this sort of defining myself by my body and my gender something that is a traumatic response to society that isn't accepting and embracing of who you are? It's trying to thrust upon you the way a woman should
Needs to be. Yeah.
Needs to be, the way a man needs to be.
Right.
And they were curious about that. I could not, of course, share my opinions on it. I don't suffer body dysmorphia.
Yeah.
But what came out nice from that exchange was they decided not to get the surgery done to chop their breasts off.
Oh, wow.
And they have beautiful breasts.
That's interesting.
So I'm like, I can't understand body dysmorphia when it's such a beautiful being.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I find that sort of, trying to change the body to fit norms according to society is also a traumatic response. And that if they were just embraced for who they are and could dress the way they wanted to and could express themselves the way they wanted to, then these desires to express themselves a certain way and state may not exist. It's a question. I'm not saying that is a fact.
Yeah.
I'm asking that question.
Yeah. So we obviously have to talk about Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara.
We do?
Yeah.
Oh, who would have thought?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like a cult movie, right? Like I watch that movie every single year.
Yeah.
Like, or maybe a couple times. Whenever it's on, like it's just a movie that
I think it's quite
we watch.
mainstream. I wouldn't call it a cult film. It's definitely mainstream.
Yeah. But like, it's one of those films where the characters are so iconic, the scenes are so iconic, you can recreate them, replay them. What was it like during or even post, like, given that previously when it was a Devdi release, you were concerned about fame or the magnitude of it, and obviously this film took it to another level.
Yeah.
Just in terms of how popular it became.
Yeah, well, it was really good fun making it. We were in Spain for 3 months. And Hrithik Farhana, really easy and actually fun to work with. We're all kind of similar ages and similar backgrounds. So, Hrithik, in fact, I'd seen him. We didn't really hang out as such, but I'd seen him as a kid as well. I was younger. And Zoya too. I'd done Honeymoon Travels Private Limited with already. She was the executive producer on that one. And so it was familiar territory. It was Spain. I love Spain. I had learned a little bit of Spanish back in 2007, so I started to practice that a little bit. That was fun. We went all over the country, ate really good food in really great restaurants. We worked 12 hours a day on average, but it didn't feel like work. I was still sort of figuring myself out in my space in the industry. That time, as you said, I was still fresh off of the FD. The fame was still pretty high. And so I don't think I had still dealt with it. It felt nice being on the sets of Zindagi because of the familiarity and the camaraderie, so to speak. And, they Excel went out of the way to make all of us feel comfortable and they treated us well. In fact, they spoiled us. I mean, they made us work, but they also spoiled us. So it was a great balance. But I was still finding myself in where do I fit into this larger scheme of things. Yeah.
Did the film give you any answers?
My track was more on the marriage part of things. Hrithik has an existential crisis, not me.
Yeah.
His character did.
The film in general, right? Like it's like one of those where it makes you think.
See, for me, when I read the script, I wasn't surprised by any of the reaction that Zindagi got. Devdi was one project I knew would do what it did. It was exactly as I envisioned it, and similar with Zindagi. I knew that this was going to touch people in the manner that it did. I was not surprised one bit when people came up to me after and said, I left my job after I saw this film. I took a 6-month break when I saw this film, and it made me question, where I was headed. Because when I read that script, it addressed all of those things for me.
Yeah.
I remember reading it and calling Zoya and telling her, thank you for offering me this. Like, I love this.
Yeah.
I love the direction Indian cinema will take after this. I mean, I knew that Oi Lucky and Devdi challenged the narrative. I think the Zindagi being more mainstream challenged it in some ways far broader, because it had a far larger audience. And just how genuinely touching it was when I read it. I could see Zoya, Rima, and Farhan really being as true to who they are whilst writing this. Because Rima and Zoya wrote it, Farhan got the dialogues, and it just proved to me that these guys are really here balancing this world of big Bollywood mainstream cinema, but at the same time trying to infuse their individual take on life.
Yeah.
And challenge the system in their own way.
Yeah. And it did that.
It did that, and then some.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll always be special. I still remember, there are a few scripts that I've read that I remember finishing it and then calling the director. This is one of them. In fact, it's very few, 2 or 3 at best. Going, wow.
Yeah.
Just wow.
Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara taught us to say yes to life's adventures. With HSBC's Travel One credit card making travel more rewarding, it's a perfect time for me to have my own ZNMD moment. So where and what has been that life-changing moment for you?
I think I started in the industry having shifted. So when I said, minus the behavioral traumas, I was already coming from that place of, my first, I suppose, shift happened when I went to college abroad and lived on my own as a kid. I was 18. And the culture shock as a result of that, seeing my family, my culture, all of it from a objective lens for the very first time, brought me to that place where I challenged the system when I went home, when I entered the film industry. I was already that person who'd seen a different perspective and now was putting that different perspective forward and knew the value of the individual. So I came with that shift. Then, of course, while I was still dealing with, I suppose, the issues of stardom and attention and all of that, I knew I didn't fit in, whether it's as a filmmaker, an artist, or an individual, and every aspect of me didn't fit in. It was a very gradual, step by step. And what really I liked was then embracing the stardom, embracing the fame, because what didn't go away was the love I got from people.
Yeah.
What didn't go away was people saying, hey, I love what you stand for. Or I love that you took on the system. I love that you do different cinema. And that started to slowly sink into my skin. So the trauma of the attention and the negativity that had brought it was suddenly being replaced by the love that it was bringing me.
Yeah.
I didn't like, everybody has a phone on the camera, and a camera on their phone now. So you're always being photographed, and sometimes you just don't want to be photographed. So you left alone. But then a lot of people pointed out, my friends, like, oh, look at the smile you have put on their faces. And I myself noticed the smiles that I put on their faces. And I'm like, that's nice, unless people are being aggressive, which rarely happens, but sometimes they come in very entitled. Then even I can sort of push back, like, no, I'm sorry, I'm not beholden to you to click a picture.
Yeah.
But mostly people are sweet and polite, and I always click. Some days you can't express having a bad day.
Yeah.
Because people don't know that you maybe lost your pet or lost a parent.
Yeah.
You have to still smile.
Yeah.
So you don't tell them that. So sometimes I'll be like, I'm really sorry, but I really don't want to photograph right now. Or like I'm sweaty and in my gym clothes.
Yeah.
But I learned to sort of enjoy it. Because I also saw that when I said it politely to people, very rarely would they get offended.
Yeah, nobody's going to push back being
No
like,
one would,
no.
sometimes they do.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And they get offended, but that's very rare. And then I'm like, that's your problem, not mine. And how do you know I haven't said yes to 9 people, the 10th person I've said no to?
Yeah.
It's suddenly like the 9 people don't matter.
Yeah.
The 1/10th person you turn down matters.
Yeah.
That, oh, this is who you are.
Yeah.
So, they don't even know.
Yeah.
But it's just seeing the nervousness in people, the politeness with which they approached me, or like how they feel bad when I say, sorry, I hope you don't mind if I don't. Oh, I'm so sorry. Like, no, you don't have to be sorry. It's okay.
Yeah.
Seeing that sort of grace that people have.
Yeah.
So I suddenly started to accept not being anonymous, accept being famous, accept being loved, because you're just being loved.
Yeah.
You could very easily be hated too, right? So I think there's a bit of that play going on where, you don't want to be hated, but at the same time, I just didn't define myself by what people said to me. So even if you hate me, it's fine, because there are those who have something against you sometimes. They're usually industry people, they're not public. They don't like what you stand for,
Yeah.
and they just think that you don't have the value that people put upon you. And I'm like, I love that hate too, because you're just not being ignored. Like,
Yeah.
you're being loved or hated,
Yeah.
but you're not being ignored.
Yeah.
And also the thought that if people don't recognize me or don't know me, then that means they're not watching your work. And you want people to watch your work, don't you? I'm like, yeah, that's why I make movies. It's for people to see them.
Yeah.
And if they don't know who I am, then they're not watching what I'm making.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was a constant dialogue and a breakdown of perspectives, and then embracing experiences, looking at them differently. The very thing of, oh my God, I'm shy, I don't want to be photographed, I don't want to be talked to be like, hey, what's up? Yeah, come on. I'm so glad
Let's
I
take
can
a
make your
photo.
day.
Yeah.
Suddenly seeing that instead. And I still didn't go back to the industry and suddenly started networking or suddenly started investing in PR and putting my face out there. I still haven't done that, and I will never do it. That's just not who I am. But I will go to events that I'm interested in, and I will show interest in events now. I do spend a lot more time in India now. I do like meeting people from my industry and seeing them and what they're up to and asking them how they are. It's coming from a place of I am comfortable in my skin, and until I wasn't comfortable in my skin, approaching them didn't feel authentic.
Yeah.
There's this crazy, it's funny in the industry. A lot of it's not everybody, but it's very prevalent. It's like who says hello to whom first.
Really?
Yeah, that defines who's more upper
Yeah.
and the
higher.
hierarchy,
Yeah,
so to
yeah,
speak.
yeah.
Like, I will not say hello. You will come and say hello to me, and I will say hello to that person because and so I was also, of course, vulnerable to that. I'd be like, I'm not going to say hello. Let that person come say hello first. It just becomes a group psyche.
Yeah.
And like now I love the fact that I don't give a shit. If you think that I give you value because I've come and said hello to you first and you wouldn't do the same to me, it doesn't matter. My value doesn't go down because I came and approached you. And there's so much freedom in that.
Yeah.
A real star will never have to think about the little things. A real star will be gracious to whomever and will be the first one to show up if need be and the last one to leave if need be.
Yeah.
So that was a real sort of eye-opener for me. There are actors in the industry who are like that.
Yeah.
So I look up to them and like, okay, why am I focused on so much of the ones who kind of make this inauthentic, kind of make this a competition? Why don't I look at the ones who don't care? And there are those too.
Yeah.
So follow their lead.
Yeah.
So there's no one clear line answer for you here.
Yeah.
So the shift doesn't happen suddenly. It's not like one day I wake up and I'm enlightened. Like, oh.
Yeah. It's a gradual, insidious
It's a gradual process. It's experiences, it's incidents,
Yeah.
it's reflection.
Yeah.
But I do feel like living in LA helped.
Hmm.
It took me away. It gave me that space. I was able to breathe. Yeah, sure. The industry was like, well, is he there now? So does he not want to work over here? I've done everything to slow my career down. Everything imaginable. No marketing, running away, speaking truth to power, all of it. You name it, what's the worst and wrongest thing to do? I've done it.
Yeah.
And I'm still here and I still have that respect. And I'm like, I can't be a privileged little shit and be negative and have regrets because that's such a beautiful place to be. You know, what are my values? Freedom is a huge value for me. Being a star takes freedom away. You know?
Yeah.
So how can I be a star but still have freedom is the question in my mind.
Yeah, you also don't conform, right? Like in the
Yeah.
sense that, you know, when your reels started appearing, when you were DJing, it was refreshing, right? Like absolutely nobody was like, oh, he's an actor. At least like from my lens, like he's an actor. Like why
Yeah.
is he DJing? It's just
Yeah.
like, that's so cool because there's another nuance and you don't have
Yeah.
to be like boxed into a particular thing and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do and this is all I'm going to do for the rest of my life, right? So walk me through that experience and how did that happen and what were the reactions? Were people like, is everything okay?
Well, I think by then people just kind of accepted that I would do something unexpected,
Offbeat,
maybe, or,
yeah.
or offbeat, however you want to define it. For me, it was just for fun. There was no real motive. I don't even consider myself a DJ. You know, I spoke to one DJ who helped me learn the machine and how it works. I said, listen, I'm not comfortable calling myself a DJ. I am DJing, but it's too easy. Like I'm mixing one track into the other and playing it, but it's really I'm selecting. She's like, yeah, you can, you know, there are people who just select. Your selection is good. You just call yourself a selector. I'm like, yeah, okay, that I'm comfortable. I know that people are probably enjoying, those who are enjoying it because my selection is good, right?
Yeah.
In my early days of my first few gigs, I think I was still not very tuned into the noise because sometimes I would just mix tracks that whilst they were matching beats, but you would still want to phase one out sooner than I did, which I managed to do now. Like you live and learn, right? But what this DJ told me was like, but by the way, you're doing more than selecting. You do more mixes than most DJs do. You mix a lot more than others do. You just have to clean it up a little bit. But you do more than what other DJs. So I said to her, am I a DJ? Like, is this what it takes? He's like, on one level you are.
Yeah.
So even that has been a process of questioning, feeling inauthentic, feeling like an imposter because it came so easy. Technology just helps you so much. And so I wouldn't necessarily go out and say I'm a DJ, but I would say I have my selection, which I am quite proud of. When I play these gigs, sometimes there is a small group of people that walk out because they thought Bollywood was going to be played. And I'm playing like house and progressive and stuff like that.
So, like a constant theme, right? Like as we've been going through this interview, is that you, whether it's New York or whether it's LA, travel has been an important part of how you've kind of like disconnected almost to like just be like, okay, I'm gonna take a step back. But like, talk to me a little bit about what travel is, what it means to you.
You know, funny enough, I have traveled for vacations, a decent amount, a fair bit. But this last decade has been travel to rather settle somewhere else as opposed to travel to go for a vacation to someplace else.
What does that mean?
So, for example, when I went to New York, I spent a year in New York. It takes about at least that much time to understand, at least I'll get a taste of a vibe and a culture of a place, of a city. Yeah. So 1 year in New York kind of gave me an appetizer. I wouldn't even say it kind of gave me an exact understanding of what it really means to be a New Yorker. And what that city stands for and what its culture is all about. But it gave me, but 1 year at a stretch is a good, it's more than a vacation, right?
You get a flavor.
You get a flavor, so to speak. And made lots of great friends who are friends to this day. LA has been 9 years now. It's been 2 years since I've been back now. But I spent a good 9 years there. And that was a long time. And I can really consider myself as an Angelino in some ways. You know, you got a manager, you open an account, you spend 9 years, you meet your community. So everybody comes and goes. Like even those who are living in LA are mostly, you know, people from outside who come and go. So what I've learned is it takes time to really get to know a place. If you really want to understand a culture and a community, you need to give it your 100%, you need to give it your time. It's not necessary. Travel could just be something you do to sort of, you know, step away from your 9 to 5 and just for a minute have fun.
Yeah.
You're not looking for deeper meaning or soul searching or nothing. You're just looking to maybe not think.
Yeah. Or like just go
Maybe
with it.
go with the flow.
Yeah.
Maybe like with Zindagi, adventure sports is your thing.
Yeah.
And you want to go there and challenge yourself through sport. Maybe relaxing by a beach and reading a book and doing nothing is your thing. And it doesn't even provoke you to ask deeper questions. All it does is make you sleep.
Yeah.
Because that's what you needed.
Or to just be.
Maybe shopping is your thing. Like you just want to get as much material stuff that you can because you want to come back home and show people the clothes you have, the bags you bought,
Yeah.
For me, travel, like I said, the last decade has been more a place of stepping away from the noise, seeing where I am, questioning where I'm headed, finding what it is that attracts me, as a person, defines me as a person. A lot of that, of course, comes mainly from making the movies I make.
Yeah.
Trying to continuously challenge the narrative of the way we say and give narratives. So people say a lot that, you were 15, 20 years ahead of your time because what you were making 15, 20 years ago, they're making today. And I'm like, yeah. And the sad truth is the ideas I have now are also 20 years ahead of today. Like, I can make that today easily. I made it 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And people will probably give me that chance now to make what I made 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But those same people will not give me a chance to make what I would probably be allowed to make 20 years from now.
Yeah.
That never changes.
Yeah. It's the same cycle.
That cycle remains because that's where I come from.
Yeah.
So all of these things helped get more solidified in my brain when I traveled.
Yeah.
I mean, long round story to come back to your question is I'm able to reflect on such things. I'm able to hone my skills. I'm able to find who I am as a person, as an artist through my travel in the last decade, which has been more go to someplace, settle down there, make a friendly community, see what they live their lives like. What is like LA also is very film industry focused. So what is the industry like over there? We grew up watching their movies, thinking they really challenge the system, they really provoke, they're very progressive. To realize that, there are certain individuals who push that. As a culture, they were able to, because rebellion there is romanticized, whereas rebellion here is disrespectful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's why they can be provocative and progressive. But that doesn't mean the industry is anyway woke or progressive by themselves. They also have the same politics that you have back at home. Hollywood that way doesn't like diversity, but it's the African American community that constantly fought so that they can define themselves in the way they have had their life experience and not some white person telling them this is whom they are, in their narrative. So similarly, even in India, there's one small group of people defining who we are as Indians. No, you need to allow many more such Indians from diverse backgrounds to define who we are.
Do you think that's changed, right? Because say like now with OTT especially, it's almost like a leveler in terms of just talent.
It was.
Okay.
It's not anymore.
Right.
Now it's very much like, okay, what are the big projects? What are the bigger names? What will get me more subscribers? Again, I'm not faulting them. They're a corporate, they're a business also. They all started off because OTTs came out of a technology that was being disruptive. So OTT platforms were by nature disruptive. The technology that they came from was disruptive. And yes, Netflix, for example, in the US really opened up the diversity of the kind of people that represented actors, the colors, and the backgrounds, and all of that. But anything that's lasts long enough and now becomes public and has shareholders to answer to will not be disruptive anymore. It's just part of the cycle. It's now somebody else has to come and challenge the OTT platforms to make that next step. But it's a welcome change to have the OTT platforms there because without them, we would have had only one choice, the theaters, and that's it.
Yeah.
And now at least we have them. Are they perfect? No. But do they open up the playing field a little bit? Sure.
Yeah.
Could they do a lot? I'm a filmmaker. Obviously, I'll say yes, they can do a lot more.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's not for me to say that they should do this or they should do that. It is what it is.
How do you think the industry has evolved over the years?
It's definitely got more diverse, as you said. I don't think it's changed the nature of the business, which is big names draw big crowds. But because it opened up the level playing field and there was a lack of big names, because now the OTT platforms are a digital space. They're unlimited.
Yeah.
They have to fill up that space. They're not a physical entity. So it made them invest in talent that would not have otherwise been invested in by the film industry. So it made them do that. And that gave rise to newer narratives, newer stars. You're no longer at the mercy of 4 or 5 handful actors.
Yeah.
Now you have 15, 16 actors. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's bigger by that much.
Yeah.
Like I said, the economics of things make things difficult for everyone, whether it's someone at a desk at OTT platform or someone as an artist, as an actor, trying to make a film. So we are all kind of beholden to the system. But within that, it's nice that they exist. They invest in new talent and new ideas because it also serves their purpose. They have a platform to grow, subscribers to get, and we as an audience are very lucky to have that, to have this situation, to have this technology, to have these platforms, because then now we have a choice. And I think that also forced and pushed the film industry to change, because suddenly, first of all, technology gave access to foreign films and shows instantly to an Indian audience that didn't have it at first.
Suddenly K-dramas are everywhere.
Yeah. So like when I was trying to make the film saying, okay, let's change the narrative, it was still difficult to access foreign content. It was growing, but it wasn't so easily available. So it was still, industry could remain in its bubble. It was insulated from those challenges. Then as the foreign stuff started coming, especially when Netflix, for example, came into the scene, it was like, wow, because Netflix was challenging Hollywood.
Yeah.
And calling out Hollywood's own sort of closed-mindedness, and making these great shows and investing in these new actors. So again, now the Indian audiences are watching this and going, whoa, now there's a generation that's growing up from childhood on this stuff. So they're also now they're in the 18 or they're in the 20s and stuff like that. They've grown up with this in their life.
Yeah.
They're not the same audience that grew up in the 80s and the 90s, who will still might have a nostalgic connect to how things used to be.
Absolutely.
They don't know how they used to be. They just see that the world has created its own space and we are just as good as the rest of the world to deliver in the way they've delivered. South Korea, why can't we deliver the way South Korea is? Of course, I think South Korea also has a lot of government investment and support, which we do not have. It makes it difficult. Like any film industry, art industry to thrive needs government support. It needs its patrons. It needs the funds and the finances and the platforms. Otherwise, it's only those money that can get ahead. And that's why India is a far bigger challenge. Because if you don't have the money, there's no other way for you to express yourself and get the budget. So France, for example, has government support, and so it's able to. It doesn't matter if a film makes money or not.
Yeah,
it's
about the art.
It's called the arts. It's a crucial element of your culture. Whereas over here, it's just looked upon as a business, and if anything, looked upon as a bad business, the bad child that has black money.
Yeah.
Which is not really so true anymore, but it may have been the case in the 90s.
This is my next question, right? Like Bollywood is like, its reputation is like very sketch, right? Like so.
But we're an easy target.
Okay.
As much as I criticize my industry, it's also because I love my industry and I always want to see it do better. I always want to see it continuously evolve, right? But we also become easy scapegoats.
Why is that?
Because it's easy to make a hue and cry about us. We're famous.
Yeah.
Oh, so-and-so did this and so-and-so did that. They are like this and they are like that. Because the news channels will pick it up. They know people will instantly grab your attention. Now talk about the same thing done by some obscure person in some obscure small town. No one's going to give a shit.
Yeah. 100%.
But does it not happen in other industries and other cities and towns? Of course it does.
But have you found that as you've been more vocal, right? Like expression is such a huge part of who you are. Being expressive about how you feel about certain things in the industry, about say directors, about certain films, about certain projects. Has it limited your scope of work at all? Or has it had an
I
effect?
said to you earlier, I checked check marked all the boxes which said, don't do this to get
Yeah.
ahead. Don't do that to get
Yeah,
famous.
yeah.
Don't do this to become a star. I did all of those things.
Yeah.
So of course it has. Again, I don't say it with regret. And I don't think it's true anymore. I've also taken a step back and lived my own life. But the fact that I'm here and I'm still making movies, it's a blessing. Because I think my karma, as we talked about earlier, was, well, you didn't like too much fame and too much attention. Well, here you go. You're not getting too much fame and too much attention. But I love my work and I really want to give back. And I feel a sense of sort of, not responsibility, but a desire to be productive. And then that is expressed to me in the form of the love that I get from people, from the audiences, regular folk, and from people in the industry as well.
Yeah.
The respect and love that I get from them. So I'm like, wow, I've actually karmically got what I created.
Yeah.
Now, if only I could get product and production and money and platforms more easily, that would be the icing on the cake.
Yeah.
And that's something that is out of my hands.
Yeah.
Because now has to be a collective sort of collaboration to support the arts, because I'm not played the star game. But as a culture, we need to have that support. Otherwise, we'll just be jo dikhta hai wo bikta hai, and just formulaic,
Yeah.
Yeah, that can only change when we all support each other.
Yeah.
Because it's good to make the formula. It serves its purpose. It sells, sure. But then to balance that out, just so that we don't become one thing, you need to step out of your comfort zone and support those filmmakers who don't conform and can't conform to that.
Yeah.
Where do they go?
Yeah. Okay.
Let them own their space.
Yeah. And
support them. Now, if we don't have a government structure that pays for the arts, that finances the arts, fine. Then the industry should get together and do it.
Yeah. It should come one way or the other, basically.
It needs to come from within the culture. And if the culture is only focused upon a number, which a lot of us are, how much did it make? How much is the earnings? Your success is only measured by monetary returns. Creative challenges, creative successes are never acknowledged. Like, okay, fine, I didn't make money, but hey, change the narrative.
Yeah.
Films changed after this. They don't give value to that.
It's not equated.
It's not the same value.
Yeah. 100%.
Because it doesn't put money in my pocket.
Yeah.
And unfortunately it's sad, because as we go more and more capitalistic, we get more and more material. Art is the first thing to suffer, or one of the first few things to suffer. Humanity is the first thing to suffer.
Yeah. To truly live it up, you need to start investing in yourself. That includes everything from creativity to wellness. So let's explore how you invest in yourself with this section. I'm going to pull out a question out of this box and you have to answer the first thing that comes to your mind. So we'll take the first one. If you could attend one live event or concert anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Anywhere in the world?
Anywhere in the world. So this is all about because this is an investment, right? Like you can't, it's going to cost a significant amount. Anywhere in the world.
Maybe some kind of a Sufi festival in Lahore.
Wow.
That'd be interesting.
That was so different. I was not expecting.
I just thought of Abida Parveen for a second. I was like, why not?
What's the best investment you've made in your mental health?
Doing online courses.
Okay.
Yeah, of mental health.
Yeah.
Addressing mental health.
Any you would like to recommend to people?
I think Joe Dispenza is one
good.
person I would recommend. Yeah.
Okay. If you had unlimited funding to spend on a creative project, what would it be?
It'd definitely be a film.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Okay. What kind of film?
It would be a dark comedy for sure.
Yeah.
Maybe a political satire. Which would probably get me shot.
Acting, music, or a spontaneous road trip? What's your favorite way to treat yourself?
Acting,
music, or a spontaneous road trip?
And it is to treat myself.
Yeah, what's the best way you have fun or you
I mean, acting is what I do.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that fits into this treat yourself question.
Just
but I want to say acting, but I'm like, but it feels like it should be a spontaneous trip.
Yeah.
If it's a treat, because I'll go back to acting.
Yeah.
So a spontaneous trip.
Okay, one splurge-worthy experience you think everyone should try at least once?
Splurge-worthy?
Experience.
I would say splurge on experiences and not things.
Yeah. So, any particular experience you've done?
As in, like what I mean by that is, I would rather rent a fancy hotel or a boutique hotel and go to a beautiful place than spend it at some big boutique shop.
Right. Okay.
On things.
On
Like that's
things.
so what's splurge worthy for me
Yeah.
is experiences, not material things.
Right.
That's what I mean. So I'd splurge on a good hotel,
Yeah.
in a good place, more than on some suit that costs the same as that week in the hotel does.
Yeah. Okay.
know?
Yeah. That's a good indication.
That's what I mean by that. Yeah.
Okay. So we're all about realignment. So talk to me a little bit about anything that you've done that's helped you realign. Like, do you meditate? Is there a certain practice that you follow? You know, most people that I speak to do a set certain of things that work for them. It doesn't have to work for everybody, but by trial and error, you kind of figure it out. So is there something in terms of a routine?
You know, I read something somewhere that stayed with me, which is, it was questioning about why people don't seem to mature in this day and age. You know, men don't seem to become men, women don't seem to become women. You know, they're just lost. They seem to be immature. And it put forward this proposal, which was, we've lost rituals. There was a tribal culture, or you belong to a tribe, and then there was a ritual for a boy turning into a man, or a girl turning into a woman, and that really stayed. It was like, wow, that's such a community getting together, creating a ritual, and then it defines you, and you sort of have a sense of purpose and a belonging. So I thought, oh, okay, we've lost rituals, so let's make a ritual of things. And so for me, like I wanted to meditate, but I found myself restless when sitting in silence doing nothing. So I thought this might be an idea. Let's ritualize it. So I started to light a ghee lamp.
Okay.
Ghee lamp because, you know, candles are usually made of petroleum. So I would light a ghee lamp and I would find mantras to chant. I'm not someone specifically looking at a mantra to a god or a goddess. For me, it's the act of chanting, the sound of my voice that calms the mind. Like with pranayam, you have Brahmari, for example, you know, so that the sound vibration tends to calm me down. So then I called my astrologer and asked, okay, what is influencing what? Again, it's not like I believe in astrology, but I thought, what if there is truth to this? I might as well chant what I need to from, and that'll help me find a chant.
Yeah.
You know, so I found my chant, and I like to sort of do tratak, looking at the flame, and maybe do a chant. It's not specific to a god or a goddess. It's the act of chanting. Journaling.
Yeah.
Journaling is good. And then I realized I'm doing everything but sitting still. Whilst it brought me to stillness, you know, tratak is also sitting in stillness in a way. It's an activity. But it's not vipassana where you just sit. The cessation of all activities. I haven't got there yet. But I find that these activities really calm me down. They're a great way to start the day. And I would say don't challenge yourself too much. Like, don't say, tomorrow I'm going to sit for an hour. No, even if you sit for 2 minutes, the act of getting up and sitting, that you did it, is enough.
Yeah.
You know? And it's not a challenge to beat 2 minutes the next day. Do 3 the next day.
Yeah.
It's not a challenge to beat 3 minutes. Do 4 the next. And then 5th, and then 6th. And slowly what happens is, you have, over the course of 5, 6, 7, 8 days, gotten up and sat down. And whether you sit in silence, or you light a candle, or you chant, or you do all of the above, or you journal, you're putting that into your body, you know, as a thing it does.
Yeah.
You know, you could stick to 5 minutes. On the 5th day, you reach 5 minutes, and then you could continue 5 minutes of the next 1 month if you want to.
Yeah.
If you feel 10 minutes is that great. But do it in the morning when you wake up. Because it just allows you, this is also Joe Dispenza, right?
Yeah.
It just allows you to sort of set the tone for the day. And when you've just woken up, it's easier to sort of sit, gather yourself together. People sit in the morning, have their chai and their coffee. They're kind of doing the same thing in some ways. Look at your health first. Look at your health first. That's more important. You know, and then do that which helps you. Just because you've focused on your own preservation does not mean you've cheated society. So if you feel very strongly about society and community and you want to do something for them, do something for yourself first.
Yeah, I mean, this concept of selfish and being selfish is super outdated, right? Because placing yourself first doesn't mean you're selfish. It just means that you align with your authenticity, with your sense of self, and you're doing what's right for you, which goes very closely with boundaries that you said.
But you said exactly right. Like this whole thing about being selfish, you only think about yourself. I mean, there are people who are selfish, don't get me wrong. But someone thinking about themselves to better themselves isn't selfish. what happens when they become better people? They're better able to serve you.
Yeah. Or they're better able to be in society as themselves.
And that's how they're serving society.
Correct.
They're actually not selfish.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think anyone can authentically love anyone unless they love themselves first.
Yeah.
You don't know love until you can holistically love your own self. And then you know the other person's value, no? But if you're just loving another and hating your own self, you don't really love the other. You don't know what love is.
Yeah.
You're probably obsessed with that person. You're probably seeking validation from that person because you have low value for yourself. That doesn't mean you love that person.
Yeah.
It just means that person serves you to feel better about yourself, because you can't feel better about yourself without that person.
Correct. It's like almost a validation.
It is validation. And so that doesn't mean you love that person. So maybe when you loved yourself, then you wouldn't need their love to validate. You'd still love them, but it wouldn't validate you.
Yeah.
You have abundant love to give, and so you'll give it. Whether you get it back or not, it doesn't define you.
Yeah.
You don't lack anything because they didn't give you back what you're giving them. You're giving because you have so much to give.
Yeah. It's very interesting. So what advice would you give people, who at this point in their life who are watching this are going through some kind of a shift, or there's fear, or there's uncertainty, or they just want to be better, right? Like in any context, in any sphere, they just want to be better. What advice would you give them to make that shift in their lives?
See, and unless you're in some kind of a physical harm's way, anything else that seems dangerous really isn't. Because a shift by nature is going to challenge you. It's going to stoke your fears. Because you're shifting.
Yeah.
You're changing your perception. You're challenging everything you've been taught by those most near and dear to you. Suddenly what mother said was wrong. Suddenly what daddy said was wrong. Suddenly you realize they were wrong. Your society was wrong. Your religion was wrong. That's a huge thing to digest. So fear is normal. And the nervous system, the way the nervous system is patterned and shaped during stress and anxiety is the same way it's shaped when it's under excitement and happiness.
Yeah.
You see, so you realize it's your perception. Your nervous system is out of whack because it doesn't know. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. It might actually be a good thing, but you don't know that because the nervous system is there to alert you of something unfamiliar. We've evolved that way to be wary of the unfamiliar because it could be dangerous. Yeah. So I think people should be aware of knowing, unless I'm going to be physically harmed here, I am safe. Unless I'm going to, be persecuted for my thoughts, if I express them, I am safe.
It's a very flight or fight survival,
Fight,
right?
flight, freeze.
Yeah, which is that instinct that drives up your nervous system to
so
be
I
like,
think
there's danger.
A lot of people, like those who procrastinate, don't have drive and all, and they constantly, holding back and not doing anything. That's freeze.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you're lazy. They say, oh, I'm just lazy, or I don't feel like it. I'm depressed. I don't have, desire. It's you frozen. Yeah. You face danger of whatever kind that you have. You don't realize that you have, and your body's frozen. It's scared because A, it might be judged. B, it might not be accepted. It might be isolated. So you'd rather not do anything.
Yeah, just like stagnate. It's like
that doesn't mean you're unworthy, of low value, or you procrastinate because you're lazy, or you have no, you're not smart enough. No, you've just frozen because it's the way fear has gripped you. Again, and then if you're under fight, and flight is easier to describe. If you're fighting the system all the time, you have to ask, okay, what is good that is getting me? And there are people who are fighting for very righteous causes, but they're still fighting.
But still at a molecular individual level, right? Like there are studies that show that using social media puts you in that frenetic state of mind, which is the fight or flight. It's almost like you feel that nervous kind of tingle because you see somebody else achieving more or being on a higher holiday. So at a molecular level, it's not even as elaborate or as vast as fighting for a cause. It's at a granular everyday level.
Yeah. For the regular Joe, so to speak, the regular person. I mean, so for example, I would tell them that my social media, I just stick to it, keeping it very happy, very light, very superficial in that sense of like, this is great, I had this great experience, or I have this movie coming out, this is a brand that I'm endorsing. I try not to get into too much depth because I feel like I don't think people will spend time reading something really in depth. I have once or twice here and there, but mostly I just think people are scrolling. I just want them to feel entertained.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's true.
Yeah.
It's just entertainment.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not an activist. I'm not a journalist. I'm none of those things. I'm an entertainer, and I choose to keep it as entertainment. And I expect people to know that that doesn't mean I have my up days and my down days. Just because I don't express my down days doesn't mean I don't have them. And I express my life in a way that keeps it light, not to tell you, hey, look, I'm so happy, but to say like, hey, there's enough problems in this world. I'm not gonna be the one to tell you this is what's happening there and this is the problem with society. There's 10 people telling you that.
Yeah.
I'm also protecting myself in a way, because at the end of the day, today, with the age of disinformation, my words can so easily be twisted. So I'm also being careful here.
Yeah.
We're all the same. We're all in the same boat. But yeah, avoid scrolling through too much social media. But that's something very difficult to let people know and understand, especially those who are young and who are born with it. For them, it's just systemic.
You don't know
right?
any other
You
reality.
don't know any other
Yeah.
reality. At least my generation saw that shift from analog to digital, right? We were young enough to embrace the digital world, but old enough to remember the analog world.
Yeah.
So we can step away from it.
Yeah.
But kids who only grew up in the digital space need to understand there was an analog space where, you didn't have a mobile phone and you had to leave a message.
Like, how do you reach a place, right?
You
Like
didn't have
Google Maps. Yeah.
You used a physical map.
Or you
Simple.
didn't get something in 9 minutes to your door.
Yeah, you waited.
You waited, or you went to
Yeah.
the grocery store.
Yeah, and it's okay that they don't have that. I'm very happy that I did.
Same.
I'm really happy that I
Yeah,
saw that.
same,
Yeah.
yeah.
I would not want to have been born in this day and age, because now what we were bombarded, even when we were growing up, it was enough information out there that was constantly growing. But kids today, wow, like
Yeah.
it's unnatural the amount of information that's being bombarded at them. Something I think someone 100 years ago would consume in, let's say, 10 years, a kid today consumes in a day.
Yeah, it's crazy to think of it like
Or something like that. I mean, I'm just making up numbers, but you know what I mean.
that. Yeah.
A vast amount of information in a
Very
really
true.
short time, and that has an impact on, as you said, the molecular level, the nerves. So it'll take a lot to detoxify from all of that, and for that they need guidance. So the only thing I can say is seek out information that empowers you. So like you and I, for example, did online courses with Joe Dispenza,
Yeah.
or we find meditations, find out a book that addresses the issue we want to deal with. Use it, because information can be used both for good and bad, no? Einstein came up with a theory for limitless energy, and what did the man can do with it? They made the bomb out of it.
Yeah.
They could have just as easily just used it for
Something else.
electricity,
Yeah.
power generation. But so anything that man creates has the potential to be both good and bad.
Yeah.
And that's just always going to be. That's nothing you can do about that. It's the nature of existence.
Thank you so much, Abhay.
No, you're
It's
welcome.
been an amazing conversation, one of the
thank
best
you.
I've had.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I
You have to
hope
say
it.
that.
Yeah, I don't say it. You can go check my
I said you
episode.
have to say that. You
No,
said,
I
yeah.
don't. But it was amazing and
Thank
so
you.
much perspective. And I hope it added some context to people watching.
I hope so too. And thank you for doing this, because I think it's amazing that you're doing this. And I hope it really helps some people out there.
Yeah.
And thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Really.
Thank you for the time.
Thanks.
As always, I hope Realign added value to your life. And if it did, please like, share, and subscribe. Every time you do that, it helps our channel grow.